Hi and welcome back to India 99.94. I'm Sara Waris from Wisden, and with me is Nikesh Rugani, commentator, broadcaster and journalist. Nikesh, hi, how have you been?
Yeah, good, thank you. Keeping an eye on obviously all things Indian women's cricket at the moment, as well as keeping across the men's stuff. And it's been a really exciting road, hasn't it, for the under-19s of recent times and world champions at the very first time of asking. And just before I go into it, I mean, I saw the final. We'll talk about that and we'll dedicate this episode. But what was it like in India? The hype around the under-19 girls.
There wasn't a lot of hype, to be very honest. No, probably because this is the under 19 tournament. So even the men's tournament, people watch it, people talk about it, but there's not a lot of hype. Like firecrackers are not burst if India wins the World Cup, be it the men's under 19 or the women's under 19. And a lot of people didn't really know about the tournament and that it was going on, which is understandable. It's not the senior event. You expect there'll be bigger craze when the women's T20 World Cup kickstarts in February later. So it wasn't as hyped, it wasn't as talked about, which is expected. Because it's the same with the men's also, but the ones who did see it, the cricket fans, obviously they know what it means. And yeah, as you said, you saw the final, so just your first thoughts on the win and what the last 6 weeks have meant for Indian women's cricket overall.
Yeah, I mean the final itself was very one-sided, and actually there was a lot of interest in England because obviously India were playing England in the final, and maybe it's just the kind of people I follow on my social media. A lot of cricket people, people based in England as well, and it just seemed that there was a lot of excitement. It was on Sky Sports, the match itself, the final. BBC Test Match Special did ball by ball commentary on the final as well. So maybe a little bit late to the party in terms of, I know the tournament was available to watch on ICC TV and there were highlights on Sky Sports in the UK. And, I'm sure it was quite a similar thing all around the world where, you know, there were ways of watching it, but it wasn't as easily accessible or via the TV or the radio to follow the tournament unless you logged into the ICC website and did it that way. So, at least it was free and available for everyone. I think that was great, but really one-sided final in the end, which is great from an Indian point of view. I mean, England all out for just 68, India knocking off the runs. I mean, there was a point in time where they needed three to win, and it just seemed to be taking an age. All the Indian players were lined up on the boundary rope. Shafali Verma had the Indian flag as well, and there was lots of sort of faffing around. She was holding it upside down at one stage, and they were trying to turn it. It was quite awkward towards the end. It just felt like it took ages to finally get over the line, but when they did, those celebrations were brilliant, and overall, it was just a great bowling performance. And maybe we'll talk about some of the individuals a little bit later on. But I mean, you can just see what it meant to the girls first and foremost. If we're just talking about them and put the focus on them for a moment, Shafali Verma in tears when she was giving her speech at the end, when she was being interviewed by Charles Dagnall on the post-match presentation before she got the trophy. And you can understand that because for her, there were doubts about whether or not, or not doubts, but there were differences of opinion. Should her and Richa Ghosh be involved in this because they've played for the senior team, they're established in the senior team? Should they be playing in an under 19 tournament? But they've never had the opportunity to do that. You look through the men's side, and there's always been that path, hasn't there? From Mohamed Kaif when he captained the men's under 19s to victory, and Virat Kohli, and there's been so many through the years who've had that opportunity to do it at under 19s level. And look, she's young enough, she fits in the age bracket, she's not breaking any rules, and I thought it was a great moment, and it just showed how much it meant to her. As for what it meant for Indian women's cricket, well, what a year this is potentially turning into, because the WPL obviously announced. They've won their first title. They've won an ICC title for India. I know the men have done it in the under-19s, but the men's senior team haven't done it for a long time. So it's the under-19s showing the way at the moment in winning these tournaments, and it's brilliant. And there's another one around the corner, Sarah, as well,
Yeah.
because Shafali was asked at the post-match presentation as well, is this the only trophy you're going to be picking up in the next month or so? And she said, hopefully we get to lift the bigger one as well.
Yeah, they'll if they reach the finals, it's going to be Australia, and from there, just hope that India finally get the better of Australia this time. And one more very symbolic thing about Shefali's tears, obviously she was emotional. uh, Richa Ghosh had spoken earlier about playing the Under 19 World Cup. It was postponed a few times because of COVID. So she was like, this was my last chance to play Under 19. But more than that, what I felt was Shefali's tears. It was, do you remember the time in 2020, the T20 World Cup, when Shefali was devastated? And against Australia, they lost the final against Australia, and she was devastated. And this win kind of especially in a country where you expect the women's team to win, where the BCCI had almost put this ultimatum that you have to win something, and then we are going to give you the WPL, and then we are going to fast track you uh, to the development and help you grow in other aspects. First you have to give us the trophy. So Shafali would have known what it feels like. She's been there at the grandest stage a lot of times, even the Commonwealth Games final. She won the silver medal, and she would have known that this win would mean a lot for Indian cricket overall, not only for the under 19 team, but the first win for the women's team. She would know that this means a lot, because there were always doubts, not only about whether she should have played, but there were doubts about, is women's cricket worth it? Should women even play cricket? There were all these doubts, and she would have faced these questions right from her childhood. Like, and these are all players, all most of the players in the team, they all belong to very not well off backgrounds. They all have to fight for the bare necessities, and in coming from that background, obviously people say you are not supposed to play cricket. Most of them just are like, you have to help in the housework, you have to do this, you have to do that, you're a woman, maybe just get married or something. And all these women have fought through all these societal expectations and pressure. And then those tears just meant so much more. It wasn't just I belong here or something. It was a strong statement to not only the BCCI, but just everyone overall.
Absolutely. And you wrote something about this, didn't you? About
Yeah.
the BCCI saying, well, or almost indicating that, well, women's cricket, is it that popular? Are we that good? Maybe if we win something, we'll get a WPL going. Well, they've shown that, you give us the WPL,
Yeah.
and we'll show you what we can do afterwards. And I know the WPL is not kicked off yet, but it's just that feel good factor almost around women's cricket in India. And some of the great stories that have come out of this. We'll talk about some of the other individuals maybe a little bit later in the episode, but I just want to focus on, you talked about the backgrounds. And Archana Devi, the off spinner who did well in the final, took a couple of wickets. I mean, it was mainly a sort of all spin attack really from India, apart from Tita Sadhu, who was the outstanding seamer and probably one of the outstanding seamers through the tournament as well. But just focusing on Archana Devi as well, from Uttar Pradesh. Father died when she was very young, and she wanted to be a cricketer. She had this dream to be a professional cricketer, and her mum, as the sole breadwinner in the house, sort of said, "Look, this is not good. How are we going to get money from this? And it's difficult. I want you to give up cricket. You're going to need to help me when you get a bit older and get a job and bring money into the house." And she was determined just to carry on cricket. And she said no. She stood up to her mum and said, "No, look, I will help with everything, but I'm going to keep playing cricket." Her mum then had to go and get a labourer's job on a farm, and it's just a fantastic rags to riches kind of story, and there hopefully will be riches for her with the WPL auction coming up. And surely she's going to get picked up by one of those franchises as well after her performances. And just look what that determination did. I mean, her mother then did support her with the cricket, also supported her education, and did it all single-handedly. So, big hats off to her as well, for how it turned out. But just brilliant stories like that. Just it's such a feel-good factor when you hear things like that.
Yeah, definitely. Even there have been similar stories about Shafali Verma herself. She's from Haryana, and Haryana, they don't really have the greatest. There are a lot of female infanticides in Haryana. There is this, obviously in India, it's still in rural places. No, the boys are preferred, and the birth of sons are celebrated. So she was born in that kind of a background, and there have been stories where her father really encouraged her, and everyone was like, you're pushing her into cricket, which is a man's sport. And there have been all these stories. So uh, when team wins, the players are applauded, but so much goes on behind the scenes. The parents, most of these players again are not from the richest backgrounds, and their parents would have had to sacrifice so much, just standing up to society that, okay, my girl has this dream, it might or might not work, but I have to go and support it. So those are the emotional scenes, and I'm sure, I'm tearing up just thinking of all of that. And Shafali Verma, she was in tears, and she would have just remembered all these sacrifices, all the hard work that has gone, and just hope that this is the start of something new. Yeah. And yeah, now we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and discuss the individual performances.
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
Yeah, so who are the top performers for you? There was Sehrawat, who was amazing, scored 297 runs. There was Tas Sadhu, as you said, and there were a few other excellent spinners. Who are the top performers? Who do you think will be the players to watch out for in the WPL?
Well, yeah, I mean, Sarawat at the top of the order, top run scorer in the tournament with that 297, and she had some not outs in there as well. So, it wasn't as if, that was it and that was her full capabilities. I mean, she could have scored quite a few more had she had the opportunity in those matches as well. But that, it's a shame she didn't get the three figures in any of the matches. Top score of 92 not out against South Africa, which was a brilliant effort again. 74 against the UAE, 61 against New Zealand as well. And then even a 31 not out against Scotland. It was probably a shame for her in the final to miss out, and it was a low score, and this can often happen, can't it, when you've got one of your top batters and you expect them to just see you home. They've been your sort of player of the tournament, your batter of the tournament, and you just think, yeah, they're going to get the job done, and it kind of didn't go to script, really, and England picked up that early wicket. She went for 5, which was a shame, but, she'll be back, and she's going to be in the Indian first team before too long, you would have thought, certainly in the squads. And she's actually given them a bit of a question mark, really, because she'll definitely get picked up in the WPL. But Shafali Verma, for all the praise she's got about her captaincy and everything else, and she had a couple of moments in the tournament with the bat, some nice shots, some cameos, you could say, at the top of the order. Never fully fired, which may be a question mark against her. But it's good to have competition at the top of the order, because Smriti Mandana is she is one of the best players in the world. She's going to be there at the top of the order for India. Does Shweta Sehrawat, does she provide enough competition for Shafali Verma? Maybe. If she keeps performing like this, if she has a good WPL, then you never know. And Sadhu with the ball, I mean, Charles Dagnall said on commentary, and I know I'm sort of name checking him a few times. He's a good friend of mine, former colleague as well. Really nice guy, brilliant commentator as well. And he made a great comparison. And I was trying to sort of work out when she was coming in and bowling and looking at her action, who she reminds me of. And there's a bit of Julan Goswami in there. There's a bit of Ishant Sharma, and there's a bit of Javagal Srinath. And those are the three which he sort of compared it to. As soon as he said that, yes, absolutely nailed on. And that's why I couldn't quite put my finger on it, because it's almost like a mixture of all three. It's the open-chested action, which all three of them have. It's the kind of the gather at the crease, which is more like Ishant Sharma. And then it's the way she hits the deck hard sometimes, which reminds you of Javagal Srinath. And she's got the ability not just to hit the deck hard at decent pace for this this sort of standard of the game, the under-19 level, but also she can pitch it that little bit further and swing it both ways. And, brilliant. She only took 6 wickets in 6 matches, but it was more than that. It was, obviously she performed brilliantly in the final itself, taking a couple of wickets and just the 6 runs conceded from her 4 overs. So really sort of set the tone. But she was, like I say, the lone seamer for most of the tournament for India. So, it wasn't as if she had any support from, seam bowling perspective from the other end. So, yeah, she'll be hot property as well. Chopra, the other spinner as well. Again, consistent through the tournament, and they've all contributed really in some way, haven't they? Which is the great thing to see. It's not just been the Shafali and Richa show, which we thought it might be, and maybe they should have bullied the rest of the players in this tournament because they're the senior pros, right? But they didn't, and it was good to see the others shine as well.
Yeah, definitely. And just it was I don't know how you feel about Shafali and Richa's performances. We would have expected more, but on one level it's also heartening to see that India won the tournament despite their top players not doing well. Otherwise you could have easily said, oh, Richa Ghosh and Shafali did well, so that's why India have won. And that could have probably not shown the world the talent that India possesses. And after the I think in one of the interviews after the final, their coach, who is Nausheen Al Khadir, her first sentence was, we have a lot of depth. And this was in reply to BCCI Saurav Ganguly's comments, where they were questioning the talent depth in Indian women's cricket. And so it's almost not a bad sign that these youngsters, they stood up and they showed the depth that is available. And it's also with the coach, it's almost very it's an inspiring story. So she was there with the 2005 World Cup team, which lost the finals, the women's World Cup final, and now she's coming back to win a World Cup as a coach. Similar thing happened with Dravid. Dravid was there as in 2003. He lost the final and then he came back and won the under-19 World Cup as the coach. And this just somehow reminds me of the whole Chak De India scene. Not sure if you've seen Chak De. The coach comes back and fulfills his dream. So it was very emotional for her also. And now looking back, do you think that it was the right step for the BCCI to actually have Shafali and Richa Ghosh there? Because I was in favor of their inclusion in the under-19 team, because I was like, Owen is going to do so much for women's cricket. But now in hindsight, do you think it was the right step? Maybe they could have been with the senior team. They are playing the Tri-Series with West Indies and South Africa. So do you think they could have played there? What it also did is Sehrawat was the vice captain. She would have led the team if not for Shafali Verma coming in. So do you think in hindsight and for the future it was actually the best move to have both of them in the team?
Initially, I thought no, because they've played at international level, but I probably have to eat my words on that a little bit, because you put yourselves in their shoes, right? I'm an 18-year-old player, 19-year-old. I'm eligible to play in this tournament. I've never had that opportunity before. The path has never been there. The ICC have been crap at creating this path for women's cricketers in the past. And right, there's the argument that women's cricket wasn't as big and whatever, but it's taken them so long to put this in place. I'm still eligible. Yeah, I've played for the national team, but I won that opportunity. Everyone else, all the men have had it. Do you know what I mean? It's when you put yourselves in their shoes, why shouldn't they? Because if they'd had the same sort of pathway as male cricketers have had all these years, then Shafali would have definitely been the under-19s captain for a few years probably. And I think it's probably right now to maybe have the same rule that the men have in terms of, I think Dravid brought this into the Indian team as well, and this culture of you play in one under-19s World Cup, that's it. It doesn't matter if you're 14 when you're playing it, you're done. That's it. Next step, you try and make the national team if you can. If you can't, then you might not be good enough, so you don't want to take up spots. So, all these players, now that they've played in one under-19 World Cup, they can happily move on, right? They've done that. They've had that development opportunity and playing on the world stage at age group level. And now just, see if you can go and shine at international level for the senior team. So, yeah, I've gone back on that, and I think it's great. And you just saw what it meant to Shafali as well. And how can you deny somebody that opportunity?
Definitely, I agree. Though Richa Ghosh, we've not spoken a lot about her in 7 matches, though she played 4 innings, 93 runs, strike rate 127, average
Dropped some
23.
catches, though. She
Yeah.
dropped a few catches as well, including one in the
Yes.
final, but which wasn't important. But, she did drop some catches. So she needs to work on her keeping as well,
Yeah.
heading into the senior T20 Women's World Cup as well.
Definitely. And I don't know how much this is true. If Shafali and Richa Ghosh will actually be flying back, I think the BCCI have arranged a felicitation ceremony for these for the team. They'll be rewarded 5 crores. Collectively, they want this event to be held in Ahmedabad. I just hope that Shafali and Richa are not forced to fly back from South Africa to India for this and then again fly back to South Africa. Shafali would want to be there because we know what it meant to her. She'd want to celebrate this with one last time with these teammates before moving on to the senior level. But I just hope that for the overall thing, they just stay back in South Africa now. I think there's a camp starting very soon. So the next step awaits, and wishing all these players the best. Right, so we'll take one more break, and when we come back, we'll talk about what it means for women's cricket going forward.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
Yeah, so just 1.5 months left for the women's IPL. How do you think this win is going to boost women's cricket in India? And how symbolic it is? As you said, I wrote in my article that no, obviously these 2 points aren't related. The WPL was announced much before the World Cup win, but it's almost like you were waiting for a win, but you just opened the gates. You were just willing to open the gates for women's cricket to grow, and see the results are coming in. So it's almost symbolic in that way. And what do you think this win is going to do for women's cricket overall?
It's going to do massive amounts. It probably already has with that victory. And just one point as well on the depth. I think what this tournament showed is, you're right, the depth that there is. I mean, all those comments before from Saurav Ganguly and people like that when he was in charge of the BCCI, or I say in charge, he was the president. Who knows who was pulling the real strings? But he sort of suggested that there wasn't as much talent in the country to have a full women's IPL, or there wasn't as much interest in women's cricket. I mean, you look at somebody like Diwari, who came in number 4 in the final. Low target to chase, yes, I get that, but England had taken those 3 wickets, and for her to then put on that partnership with Trisha, both of them together, you're wondering, you think Shefali's got out. Oh shit. Sarawat's got out. She's been our top scorer. Oh shit. And then you kind of think Indian women's cricket has been here before, hasn't it? In big matches
Yeah.
against Australia, usually. Who the hell's going to get the job done? I mean, you think that with the senior side at times, don't you? And England really had their tails up at one point when they took those 2 early wickets. And then for Trisha and Tiwari to put on that partnership, Trisha falls, and then Tiwari, some of the shots she played, just the calmness, it reminded me of Ashwin at the Men's T20 World Cup when he was winning that match against Pakistan. Just that shot he played to win it, the leave, it's only 2 shots, but just that innings from Tiwari just reminded me of the calmness of somebody like him. So it shows how much depth there is in Indian women's cricket, and I think that's great. And I tell you what, I mean, there's a real potential that before the WPL starts, India could be the under-19s women's world champions and the T20 women's world champions as well. And then hello WPL, let's go and celebrate with a tour of these stadiums across India and show off all these wonderful female cricketers who've done the nation proud. It could happen, even if it doesn't happen with the Women's T20 World Cup. The under-19s, what they have done is they've got people talking about women's cricket who wouldn't usually talk about women's cricket, and winning breeds that, doesn't it? You could be any sport, right? You could be, if India had a world chess champion who won 3 titles in a row, people would talk about that person, wouldn't they? And they have had that in the past. And it doesn't matter what sport it is. If you win, if you have success at any level on a world stage, it's going to get people talking. It's going to get interest up. People are going to watch on TV more. People are going to come to stadiums more as well. And I don't think the WPL needed that much of a boost, but this has just created that hype, probably, times 2, times 3 now, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely, I agree. And even if the women's team are unable to win the T20 World Cup, now that we've spoken about it, we are on track to jinxing them. But I strongly believe in this. But even if they don't win the T20 World Cup, the platform has been set. The people know that, okay, the talent that is coming up is there, and we've spoken a lot about how the WPL can help the players and put them in pressure situations, throw up more talent. There have been a few areas where the senior team have been lacking in, and the youngsters coming in, they'll fit in, they'll know, they'll be face the best bowlers, they'll be up against the best batters, and yeah, just their overall game is going to go on to the next level. So even if they don't win the T20, the senior T20 World Cup, uh, it's not that there is gloom ahead, because earlier we used to be like, who next? Like, there is Harmanpreet Kaur and there is Smriti Mandana, but who next after them? Jemma has been very underwhelming, but now you can say, okay, these are the players who are there, and there are a lot of other players also. You just give them the platform, and not only people like Richa Ghosh and all who have already been there, but people like Sehrawat and all the other youngsters coming up, they will have the perfect platform to hone their skills and then go on to uh, hopefully help India win a few more trophies.
And there's the WPL, which people like Sarawat and Sadhu and a few others will look to be get picked up in. But then there's the 100, there's the WBBL. There's
Yeah,
other
definitely.
opportunities now opening up for them as well.
Definitely, and there's the women CPL also. There were just 3 teams last year, but it might expand, and even WBBL, as you said. So definitely, huge future awaits, and this was just the win that was needed to get tongues wagging, because it was almost like, is it a risk? Is the WPL a risk? Is the talent there? Will the quality of cricket be adequate? There were all these talks, even though the WPL was announced, but now you can say that, okay, they just needed a platform, and this is a platform. It's not a blind punt, and a great future awaits. So this win, the timing has been great, and just hope, yeah, it's the start of something amazing. Right, that's all we have in today's show. Keep watching 99 India on 99.94. Thank you.